What makes great key art? The hell if I know, but I'm going to tell you how I make mine. If it fits! So our December short film is coming up, releasing December 22nd or December 23rd. We'll see. Subscribe to the channel. Just do that. And I am just starting to put together ideas for what the key art is going to be for the short film. I do all the key art and posters and thumbnails for all of our short films. If you don't know what key art is, it's essentially the poster. And I thought I would talk a little bit about what I do to make those, and not necessarily the technical aspects of making them, because that kind of varies on short to short and is much more about design skills than necessarily specific to key art. So I want to talk about things that I do and I think about when I am making a poster for a movie, what I think makes a great movie poster. And the one thing that I will say right up front is that I do not believe that key art is a thumbnail. There are many people out there giving you the best practices on what gets people's attention when you're making a thumbnail for YouTube, which is essentially just smiling face looking directly at the camera with some kind of text describing what the video is. And I'm making fun of thumbnails a little bit because you see a lot of those thumbnails of the overly surprised YouTuber. Like, what is it? What's right there? You better click to find out. But people do it because it works. I do it myself. Face looking at camera, text describing the video. But I think to sum up my point, I think that key art is a little more artistic, whereas a thumbnail is a practical way to let people know what they're getting into. YouTube is really more of a search engine and people looking for information, and so a thumbnail is much more matter-of-fact, practical way to let people know what's inside a video. That being said, the first thing that I do when I am about to sit down and start making the key art for any of these short films is I brainstorm. I try and distill the short film down to its simplest form. What is this about, if I could say it in a few words? And I take that fairly literally. Like, what is actually going on in this? Does it center around one character, one place? The other thing I like to distill down is the tone. What is the essence of the tone? Is it funny? Is it funny and a little dramatic? Is it scary? Is it suspense? I try to break the film down almost to only a feeling, because I think really good key art just evokes the feeling of the movie. Or my favorite key art puts you in the headspace of the movie before you've even seen it, almost prepping you for what you're about to experience, even though you might not even be able to express that just from seeing the poster. And then the next thing I do is I look for inspiration. And the reason that I do this after I kind of brainstorm and distill the short down is because I don't want the inspiration to pull me in a direction that might not be right for the short. I want the short to inform me of the direction of the inspiration. And what I do is I create a Pinterest board, and I go on the internet and I go on Pinterest and I just start to pin a bunch of different designs that I think would work really well, that would look really cool for that specific key art. This is what I'm doing right now for the Christmas short. As you can see, I don't have too much in there yet, but I'm definitely going for a kind of retro Christmas vibe for this one. This is what I was looking at for the Delirium Tremens. Something focusing on a main character, like this kind of cool hand-drawn thing. I went through this phase where I thought maybe a beer bottle would be cool with Joe kind of superimposed within it, something messy. I really like this Whiplash poster. And the whole Pinterest board thing is something that I picked up from Michael Frederick when I took a class with School of Motion. He taught a design class for motion designers. And if you are interested in motion design, motion graphics, animation, I would highly recommend taking a class with School of Motion. The class that I took was the Design Bootcamp, and it was awesome. I am a competent, verging on pretty good motion designer, animator, but I really needed more of a background in composition and design. And so I took that class and it was fantastic. I wrote a blog a little bit about my experience with it. I'll link to that in the description. It was intense. The class was a lot of work, but it was well worth it, well worth the money. They're a little pricey, but if you can swing it and you're looking to improve your skills in the world of motion graphics or animation, I would highly recommend any of their classes. Anyway, the third thing I do is I begin. This is another thing that I picked up from this class, is that you just get in there and start doing things, start throwing things on an artboard open up a Photoshop file and just start putting things on it, because honestly, I could look for inspiration forever and I can hem and haw about which direction I should go, and it's not until I really get in there and start putting things on the virtual page. It sounds so cheesy, but you literally discover what it's going to be as you're doing it. It never turns out exactly what you think it's going to be in your head, whether it's because your skills aren't quite there to execute what you want to execute, or just because you kind of hit on something that you weren't thinking of from the start that works better than you ever could have imagined. You're never going to get to that point until you start putting the pieces on the page, and then you start to layer it. You pick away at it until suddenly there's something there that's kind of resembling a poster. And I talk about this all the time, but you're gonna hate it. You're gonna hate it. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours that you're working on it, you're gonna hate it. But then all of a sudden you're gonna go, oh, wait a second, I kind of see what this is going to be. A prime example of that for me was the Kids and Cars Getting Killed by Creatures poster. My original intention was to essentially just kind of ape the original It Follows key art, which would have been cool, but I just couldn't get that picture. And so I just started playing around with it. And I knew I was going to have something with the car, so I decided on this picture with the seat, and I just messed with it. I took this image that I had, a still from when we were shooting of the back seat of one of the cars, and I cut it out, and I just messed with the threshold and the coloring, and I turned into this ugly, disgusting, really noisy, contrasty image. The film ended up being a little kitschier than I had anticipated. I thought maybe something a little retro, and I thought, okay, what's in the back of a car? And you have the windshield. But so I didn't want to recreate an actual windshield. So, you have the lines in a window. And so I had this, and I thought, you know what, this kind of looks like a 1980s Stephen King book cover. And so I just kind of ran with that. Just kind of a mass market paperback look, which I really liked, and I think it fit the eventual feel of the short film. Speaking of that, sans serif. You don't want to forget about the font. And I don't just mean picking out the font. I mean everything about the font. I think the font is, I don't know if it's underlooked, but it's definitely something that I overlooked when I first started making these. And I think I kind of looked into a few things. So for Duppet, I knew I wanted the serif font, but then I also added the period to the title. There wasn't a period originally. I just think that with the kind of stoic look on Duppet's face, and I don't know, I think adding the period made it kind of funny. There's something so matter-of-fact that is so appropriate to Duppet's kind of whole demeanor and really reflects the character pretty well. And then with Delirium Tremens, again, not just the font, but I decided that everything would be lowercase. It's a story about a man kind of trying to piece his life together as the world falls apart, and there's something about everything being lowercase that feels... It's a little messy, it's a little unsure, he's not quite complete. Even the title, Delirium Tremens, just, you kind of can't tell where one word begins and one word ends. It's just kind of a mush of letters, in the same way that he is kind of going through this trippy memory experience. And then obviously the world is falling apart, so I kind of just messed up the letters a little bit, took out little pieces so that they kind of give the impression of they're crumbling. They're not quite crumbling, but they're falling apart. And the last thing to do is think about where they're going. In this day and age, you're posting these things everywhere and anywhere. I post on Instagram, which is a 1350 by 1080. That's a 4:5 ratio. 1920 by 1080 for YouTube, which is a 16:9 ratio. There are others. IMDb, Amazon Prime has their own. You're going to have to export a few different versions of this, and you want to make sure that it fits nicely in all of these places, because it looks better, it looks professional, and it's going to get people's attention more, which, while it's not a thumbnail, is still very important. So I'm actually going to leave a link in the description where you can download the Photoshop files of the 3 posters that I've made so far for the short film project. Duppet, Delirium Tremens, and Kids and Cars Getting Killed by Creatures. So you can look at them, you can tear them apart, you can see what I did to them. You can make fun of my layers if you'd like to do that. I don't know why you'd be so cruel, but if you want to, you can. It's all down there. Let me know in the comments your favorite movie poster. Do that. Let me know, because I want to see it. And if there's anything you think I missed, or anything that you think I should think about to make these posters even better than they already are. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next week.